Let us begin the next session, Session 3, the front lines of economic security. Over to you, Yuasa-san. So let us begin Session 3. I am an attorney at law at Nagashima Ono Tsunematsu. Up until last year, I was at METI, the Economic Security Policy Division. And today I will be acting as the facilitator. Thank you. First, I'd like to ask each of the panelists for a self-introduction, starting from Professor Tamai, please. At the University of Tokyo Research Center for Advanced Science and Technology, and I'm also appointed professor at the Institute for Social Systems at the Shinshu University. So IP and economic security, I cover various aspects from the legal perspective. I have been an expert in intellectual property, especially trade secrets. And as an extension of that, I became involved in economic security. And my main expertise is in the U.S. law. So I actually haven't been able to follow the latest American law developments, but that is my area of expertise. Thank you. May I? Well, hello, everyone. My name is Nakatani. Thank you for inviting me on the panel. I'm at NEC, currently Chief Security Officer, in charge of cybersecurity and security clearance. And there's another company called NEC Security. I am a CEO of that company. But actually, I originally worked at the National Police Agency for 26 years. On page 10, my detailed background is on the brochure. But basically, I was in charge of cybersecurity. And my first work was regarding, for example, anti-spy countermeasures, but also regarding the foreign exchange and trade. So in that aspect, I was in charge of these economic security from the police perspective. Hello, everyone. Once again, thank you for inviting me. This is the very last session, so I hope that you will sit back and relax. The brochure probably says Ito, formerly Mitsubishi Electric Corporation. I actually retired from Mitsubishi Electric as of Monday this week, so I don't have any titles to my name as of today. But at Mitsubishi Electric, for 20 years, I was engaged in semiconductor business. And then for 19 years, I was in governance, corporate governance overall. And in the last 5 years of my career, I was focusing on risk management from economic security perspectives. I am not a specialist in geopolitics. Economic security is not confined to compliance. It is a wider coverage in risk management. Why is it not just compliance? Because U.S.-China laws and regulations in its operation has various inconsistencies, and so within this world of contradictions, how corporates should try to survive. That is my area of expertise. So I thought I would be out of work starting from Tuesday this week, but fortunately, Japanese think tanks, METI, and legal experts have asked me to have invited me to speak at various symposiums or various meetings. And so I think for the foreseeable future, I will be speaking as a legal expert in this field. Thank you. Okay, thank you for the self-introduction. So once again, this session is titled The Frontline of Economic Security. So allow me to speak a little bit about the recent developments in economic security. The first slide is that the world remains uncertain and policy uncertainty is growing. This graph talks about the policy uncertainties in the world. As you can see from 2000s, the uncertainty level has been growing and growing. In 2022, the aggression of Russia against Ukraine. And last year, as you know, various important elections took place across the world. So such uncertainties have risen with the increase in global elections. And economic security policies have had various developments. Let me compare US, China, and Europe, which I'm sure that you are well aware. In terms of the US, it's a triple red administration, and President Trump has a very strong foothold. But in terms of the economic security, it cuts across both parties. And in terms of this aspect, the Biden policy continues. But the mutual tariffs were announced yesterday, and there is a rising tendency toward protectionism. And regarding the economic security, there is a high likelihood that such policies will be enhanced. One example is that at the end of the Biden administration, several important regulations were announced. For example, regarding the leading edge semiconductors, export of biotech, and regulation regarding connected cars, as well as foreign investment regulations. And on the day that President Trump took office, he has issued several memorandums regarding enhancement or strengthening of these measures. So he has already given a direction of strengthening the regulations. Now, in terms of Europe, far-right parties have made headways in various countries, and the weakening of EU has been on the news. However, when it comes to economic security, each country is basically aligned. And in 2023, the economic security strategy was announced by the EU, and last year, the economic security package was announced. And this includes dual-use export control and inward, external, and outward investment regulations. With COVID and the war in Ukraine, Europe has been facing the vulnerability of its supply chain, and EU is focusing on strengthening the resiliency of its supply chain. And the economic security package that I just mentioned, various policies are underway. And multifaceted approach is being taken. For example, industrial promotion and industrial protection are both parts of this package. Also, there is a keen focus on international coordination, and there has been more partnership with Japan as well when it comes to economic partnership. Now, let me turn to China. Since last year, the domestic Chinese economy has been a bit sluggish. The real estate market and domestic spending is said to be rather weak. And China has been manufacturing excessively, exporting to other countries and gaining profit. But now China is facing the high Trump tariffs, and so they are being confined in that aspect as well. So China is aiming to stabilize relationships with neighboring countries such as India and Japan. The People's Congress was held last month, and proactive fiscal and monetary easing to stimulate domestic demand was called for, and also self-reliance and self-strengthening regarding AI and leading-edge semiconductor. That has been promoted by President Xi. Of course, this has been the policy since the past, but with the emergence of DeepSeek, it seems China is even more focused on growing its domestic industry. And also, there is various control regarding the export of important minerals, for example, gallium and germanium. These are used for semiconductors, and also graphite, which is a material that is used for EV batteries, where China has a high market share. So regulations, export restrictions or regulations have been placed on these important minerals. Now, let me briefly touch upon Japan's economic security policy. Regarding the industrial support, this week, the FY25 budget passed the Diet, and for GX, AI, and semiconductors, about 1 trillion yen of budget was allocated. Also, regarding the Foreign Exchange Act, there was a major change at end of last year. The public-private dialogue scheme for technology management was in the revised Foreign Exchange Act, which I will touch upon later. Regarding the economic security promotion, there was also significant changes. One is the core infrastructure system, such as in optical fiber and other semiconductor-related equipment. Also, the screening system for specified foreign investors was also included. There is a designation for the specified foreign investors with a prior screening system. And this is with Chinese companies or investors in mind. On the right-hand side, we have the Economic Security Promotion Act, which was also revised. One is the establishment of GOCO. This has not been reported that widely, but GOCO stands for Government-Owned Contractor-Operated. And this has been adopted in the US for many years now. But basically, for companies or factories that manufacture security-related products, the government purchases and owns those factories and have the private sector operate these factories. So even if the cash flow is short, or even if the factory is not profitable, if these factories are unable to be operated, then such a important products for the national security, it will be at risk. And so that is a scheme. Also, the core infrastructure system has started. And the port transport was added as a core infrastructure system. Also, medical fields such as hospitals were discussed at that time. Such medical field was not included based on those discussions, but recently such discussions have restarted to consider the inclusion. Another is the security clearance. Last May, the Act on the Protection of Important Economic and Security Information came into force. And so a new system for security clearance was adopted. And so, sorry, this law will come into force this May, next month. So various standards, etc., have been announced. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, the bill is being discussed at the Diet as we speak. About 2 hours ago, the lower house cabinet committee passed this bill. So probably this bill will pass the House of Representatives within this week. Regarding data security, the digital agency has established a working group with a future bill in mind, although this will take some time. So this was a very brief outline of the latest trends globally and in Japan. Now, based on this, I'd like to have a discussion with you.
As a starting point, I would like to talk about the idea and direction of economic security of Japan. This is very high level and somewhat ambiguous, but I would like to raise some points for discussion. In terms of the concept, as I've been speaking with people from businesses, they say often that they're not sure what economic security is about. In terms of industrial support, what is the boundary between industrial policies, trade policies, and food security boundary is also not clear. And in terms of direction, basically Japan is defensive. As you can see on the slide, these are the policies of the EU. At the very bottom, we have anti-coercion instrument. So this is applied to EU and members of the EU. And when there is an economic coercion act by a third country outside of the EU, they are going to trigger a countermeasure, and they have procedures and criteria to do that. Japan doesn't have all of these. Given the current economic security direction and concept, I would like to ask the speakers for their comments. Then can we start with Nakatani-san? I need a microphone, excuse me. So Iwasa-san just gave an introduction. Over the past couple of years, Economic Security Promotion Act was developed, Security Clearance Act was developed, and we now have the active cyber defense bill. Considering the history post-war, I believe we've been having more new laws in the past couple of years, and I think that is a big trend. Economic security is about security. That is the essence of it. And why have we been seeing these essential changes over the past few years? They bring about a lot of drastic impact. Digital or data economy created a significant impact on the economy, a fact combined with geopolitics. Digital technologies, or should I call them AI technologies, I believe this is a competition over superiority, mainly in the US and China. But the EU is not just embracing all of these. They are introducing stricter regulations. So AI is also one of the programs. And I believe that we will be having a competition over data. Especially in Gen AI, we need data. Data is critical. High-quality data is critical for the model to evolve. So in that regard, data economics data-driven economy, the longer it continues, well, I believe this competition is going to go on until either or is going to win. So Japan has been exclusively defensive, and protecting data and utilizing the data at the same time is important. Not just being defensive, but we also need to think about utilization of data, and that is becoming more important in the context of security. In economic security, we not only have burdens. In the past, efficiency and cost were everything in competition, but nowadays they are not good enough. It needs to be safe at the same time as being cost effective. And that is what the law is requiring businesses. And for Japan-based companies, I believe this is a paradigm shift that is being a tailwind for them.
Thank you very much. So the battle over data is becoming more fierce, and the concept of security is evolving. Let me ask Ito-san, from a company's perspective, how do you see Japan's economic security policy and its direction? Thank you for the question. Well, Japan's economic security policy, that's very difficult from a broad strokes perspective. But as Professor Yuasa, you mentioned, Japan's national security policy, you said that Japan is more on the defense rather than offense. But actually, there is offense, such as promotion and building partnerships. And I also believe that it is Japan that started to talk about this in a more structural manner. Of course, when it comes to cybersecurity, in 2017, China passed the Cybersecurity Act. So Japan, the Economic Security Promotion Act core infrastructure protection started in 2023. So in that sense, China was ahead of Japan by 6 years. So of course, the structure itself is slightly different between China and Japan. So can we just say that Japan is behind? That is not necessarily the case. Within the context of economic security, there is a different initiative that have been taking place in parallel. And within the corporate economic activities, I have been to Europe and US, and I have been told many times that Japan is quite advanced when it comes to economic security. Of course, if you look at each of the details, Japan may be ahead in some aspects, but behind in other aspects. But Japan has been leading in some of these aspects. And within this broad framework of economic security, Japan will be building partnerships, which will be a very big challenge going forward. Now, from a corporate perspective, not from the government-wide perspective, we have to think about what companies should do. And I come from a manufacturing background. And from the company's perspective, when we talk about protection, it's always about the supply chain, how we protect the supply chain. And supply chain is not just about physical goods. It could be data or software or money that is procured, and that is all part of the supply chain. But from the manufacturer's perspective, ultimately, the physical goods, products, play an important role. So the important minerals was touched upon by Yuasa-san. China, over the past 2.5 years, have been placing more and more restrictions on the export of important minerals. How do we build a stable supply chain for those minerals, working with other countries? And what is the role that we expect for the government? That is of grave interest to the companies. And for promotion, this comes to the information security, which lies at the heart of companies' competitiveness. For companies to be competitive, this is very important. And I'm not talking about economic security, but for the competitiveness of companies. For example, if a company is strong in air conditioning technology, if that technology is taken by another country, then that company will lose its competitiveness. So when we think about Japan's industrial competitiveness, then we have to think about each company's competitiveness, how we protect the security of these information, the secret, the key technology of each companies. And so companies must conduct both promotion, protection, and partnership. All these three are important. And ultimately, it is about the protection of supply chain and protection of technology information. These two are the activities that companies need to do for the economic security. Thank you.
Thank you. Information security. I didn't have a viewpoint of promotion, so it was very informative. So since we brought up security, I would like to move on to the next topic. Prevention of tech leakage and security clearance. First of all, I'd like to ask Professor Tamai. Recently, in universities and research institutions, information leakage via people is attracting more concerns. In terms of research security and integrity, I think Japan has started to take on a journey. On this slide, I have put some underlines showing checklist guidelines. These are kind of soft laws, not actually legally binding. So are they truly effective? That is one question. So I would like to ask you for your comments on practical challenges. Thank you. This perspective is something that I have been inquired or complained by businesses. In terms of tech leakage, I now work for a university, and this is one of the most important and vulnerable entity. So economic security is a part of national security, and if that is the case, in order for a country to protect itself, it needs to do whatever necessary, and that is economic security, I believe. But that said, preparing how many numbers of missiles, that is not the important thing, but instead we need to enhance our economic capabilities and the supporting technical capabilities. Otherwise, we would not be able to fulfill economic security. Even if we work hard on economic security, we wouldn't want Japan to end up being a poor country. That is not equal to accomplishing economic security if the country becomes poor. In Japan, discussion around national security is quite few, and it's been said that we take this piece for granted. But that is not the only reason. In Japan, exercising rights, enforcing regulations is something that we are hesitant to do. And Japan is behind in many aspects in general. And in terms of preventing technology leakage, in universities, we may have checklists, and when we have new guidelines, we are told to study them. And if we don't take trainings, we cannot apply for research funding. Such burden is imposed quite often, and I believe that is only going to increase. But that is not good enough to prevent technology leakage. Technology is important for Japan, or technologies that is critical for any company or organization. They could be sold to a third party, third country, or you could give a USB memory stick to your overseas friend, or you can go out of Japan and go to Beijing. And people will do that no matter how much they are trained. So to prevent such fraud, if we continue imposing uniform burden on everyone, that will only obstruct our technological capabilities, and we need to have strict penalties for those who commit such act of leakage. Recently, we in the National Research Institute, there was someone who was trying to bring their research outcome to their home country to use for business. And on March 5th, the court rendered a decision. It was suspension of execution of sentence. This person was from China, so I believe he or she is going to be deported. But from their viewpoint, I believe that individual will be treated very highly because he or she is going to be a hero bringing back new technology. So there is not going to be any penalty in China. And not just bringing back the technological capabilities, that person established a company back in China with a spouse and applied for a patent. And the court decided to give suspension of execution because this individual worked so hard for the country. In the U.S., it will be completely different. There is not going to be any suspension. 5, 8, 10 years in a federal prison is the likely sentence. So when we heard that court decision, the mass media asked me for a comment, and I thought that corporate spies are going to come to Japan. All the corporate spies from around the world will come to Japan. So it may be a part of the government's inbound policy. So I believe this means that we do not have a functioning economic security, and this is very deep-rooted. Giving strict penalty, if I promote such idea, people will question my personality. But I think I even have to say such things.
Thank you very much. Now, information management within companies, that's the next angle that I like to take. Of course, such industrial spy risk exists in companies, and you have to prevent technology being leaked to outside countries. For companies that are doing business in multiple countries, there is a transfer of information within the company, but that also goes across borders. And this could also involve personal information, but also information related to national security. So decoupling within the corporate entity may be one approach. But what is your experience, Nakatani-san, regarding information management within companies or decoupling? Thank you very much. So when we're doing business in various countries across different continents, then decoupling is possible. So to some extent. But information decoupling may be possible, but people decoupling is very difficult. Because wherever you are, there will be employees of different nationalities. And of course, setting access control is possible, but you can't exclude people just because they are of a certain nationality. But although I'm not able to go into too much detail because there's no NDA, but Microsoft 365, there is AIP, Azure Information Protection, and this is rather useful. If you label it as internal or confidential, then that cannot be shared outside of the company. Or if you could set a specific access rights to individuals, and other people will not be able to look at that. So there is a certain level that's possible, but for example, I joined the National Police Agency in 1994, and that was when COCOM was disbanded. And then the Wasna arrangement was launched a few years later. Due to geopolitical reasons, dual-use technology of corporations have been protected for many years. So Wasna arrangement is an arrangement, so it is to prevent the military conversion or the use to certain countries. It's not enforceable. It's not compulsory. In the past, communication technology was used. Now encryption technology is used, and it's up to each country to implement this. In Japan, that would be the Foreign Exchange Act. So when I was at the Kanagawa Prefecture Police, there was a case involving North Korea. And so ultimately, it's people with the access right or people with the authority who conduct these activities. So it was a case of a physical contact. And so that could be monitored. But beyond 2010, 2015, the U.S. wind turbine company that was operating in China, a headquarter in U.S. The software itself was had billions of dollars of value. So how can China take that technology? You need to access engineers with those access rights. So what they do is to find such engineer on the social network. And so you identify multiple engineers, and then you monitor them for a long time. And then one person is bad-mouthing his boss. So that's like point one. This person is dissatisfied with the company. And then later, that person is talking about separating from his wife and that he doesn't have much money. So that's how they were able to access him through LinkedIn, call him to China, ask for advice, and ultimately $1.7 million was provided to this individual, and the billions of dollar wind turbine software technology was taken. So you can set access limits so that people without the access rights will not leak the data. But it's a problem when the people with the access rights leak the data. And this is, I think, where the justice departments or the authorities need to work hard. Because for companies, it's trust and verify. You trust first, but for the legal authorities, it's doubt and verify. You don't trust first, you doubt, and then you verify through the investigative process. But for the private sector, we need to first trust the employees. That is the difference, and that is where the confounding matter is.
Thank you. So judicial authorities need to work hard. On the other hand, as Professor Tamai said, it is difficult to give a severe penalty. So I recognize the challenge here. And as a follow-up, as I introduced earlier, there's something called security clearance, which was recently developed. This is an information protection system of the government. Critical economic security information is provided through this system. So, Mr. Ito, from the viewpoint of a private sector company, what do you think is the significance of using this system? And when receiving information, what do companies need to think about? How should they prepare? Thank you. First of all, I need to give a disclaimer that what is covered by the security clearance system is unknown. If we know what is covered, there's no meaning of having this law. So Basically, if the government designates that there is critical sensitive information that needs to be shared with a private sector, then they will utilize this system. And it is perhaps important to explain why that company needs to be shared this information. In case of a cyber attack, what could be a practical problem and what could be possible countermeasures? Such information is not likely to be covered by security clearance. Instead, it should be known publicly. But if there is a government agency attacking, targeting at a certain information, then that it should be covered by security clearance. So the former type of information should be made public, but latter type of information, should it be learned by everyone? That is what companies need to think about. By knowing or receiving such information, in the future of individuals receiving that information, there could be risks, and the government would need to incur cost to build an infrastructure. So we need to be cautious. In companies that I've worked for example, when there is a power outage risk, should we stop one entire factory? If we try to make such decision, who will be able to make that decision? Without any background information, no one will be able to make such decision. That means we need chief something officer. With the security clearance, and if it is a CEO, he or she needs to be accountable for their decisions. So I said chief something officer, but it could be chief security officer or chief risk management officer. It depends on the company. But those senior managers need to ensure security clearance, and that is going to be important for companies. But discussion around security clearance, this is not something that should be taken care of by unnecessarily a lot of people, but it should be handled by a limited number of people who really need to deal with it. And that is the first point. And secondly, we gave advices to the process of developing this law. So in 2014, there was a law called Act on the Protection of Specially Designated Secrets. And there are employees who are covered by this law. But based on this time's Act on Protection of Critical Economic Security Information, there are no general employees covered. So when this discussion penetrates, and when we have more human resources who have such capabilities in the private sector, there are cases where developments are outsourced to private sector. So the private sector of Japan and the other country will be able to be engaged in a dialogue. So security clearance proves trust. This is like a hallmark of trust. It may sound contradictory with what I said at the beginning, but as this system penetrates, I believe we're going to have such timings. So I am not going to say that we can start international joint R&D from next year, but I think we need to have that in our mind.
Thank you. So who gets the clearance within the company? That's a very difficult topic. So as Ito-san just said, chief risk officer or chief security officer, let's say that person is a foreign national, or then should that person be given that role? Then I think we need to watch the future trends, but there are many topics that companies need to discuss and consider. Now let us move on to the next topic. Regulation and public-private dialogue. As I mentioned at the onset, the Foreign Exchange and Trade Act was revised, and there are future revisions that are being planned. So I'd like to ask Professor Tamai on this. One is regarding the public-private dialogue scheme that was newly developed. So at this time, for 10 areas, important technology, core technology is designated. And if you are going to transfer technology in those 10 fields, then you need to make a prior notification to METI. And there are penalties if you don't comply. So with this prior notification system, there is public-private dialogue between METI and the private company. And basically, with the administrative guidance, technology transfer or technology leakage can be prevented. That is the basic scheme. So there is also the enhancement of catch-all regulations and strengthening of export control and investment control. So regarding the technology transfer and cargo transfer for cargo that is important for national security, do you think that the current system is effective, or do you have any concerns with regards to the current system? Well, generally, I believe that developing such a scheme is very positive. Of course, there may be some technology which whose significance will change over time, and so of course the government will not be able to capture all of this information. So there needs to be a partnership between the private sector and the government in order to have effective regulations. So I think that's overall very good in the Foreign Exchange and Trade Act, as well as for information technology and communication technology. We need to have that kind of a framework involving both the public and the private sector. Having said that, for such a public-private dialogue scheme to work, for the company that Ito-san worked for, or for the company that Nakatani-san worked for, these are blue-chip companies who have a very strong export control system. They have experts and professionals. And so when there is a technology transfer, then of course they would do this very well in terms of the prior notification and check all the boxes. However, there are other types of companies, let's say a startup company for drones or robots, and we as universities have a lot of engagement with these startups. And then for the robots, of course, it could be used for peacetime use. But robots can also be used in the battlefield for people who are experts in the Ukraine war. Every month, 80,000 drones are being deployed in Ukraine. And because of the advancement of jamming technology, wireless guidance of the drones is no longer possible. So using the optic fiber cable, these drones are now flying, not wireless, but with wires. And when we think about the Taiwan contingency, this is something that we have to think about. And so the Taiwan government is keeping a close eye on what's happening in Ukraine, and Taiwan would like to promote such technology. Now, when that becomes known to startups in the private sector, they may say that, for example, we have this type of technology, such as drones being controlled by wires, that is perhaps being used for dispersing agrochemical. But such startups may not know about these kinds of scheme, and we need to find other ways of collecting information from the government perspective on top of this public-private dialogue.
Thank you. Then I'd like to ask Mr. Nakatani. So, public-private dialogue. The government has been saying repetitively that such dialogue is important, and I totally agree. Between the government and the companies, I believe, however, that there is a gap in terms of how serious and active they are. In the METI, I was in charge of public-private dialogue, but what the companies are saying and what their councils are saying were sometimes different. So from the company's point of view, how do they perceive this public-private dialogue? I agree with you. When I was in the NPA and when I compare that with how I see things in my current position, they are very different. But for economic security, we do need a public-private dialogue. And because we're in the digital economy, the importance is increasing more than ever. And I feel that we have different protocols. For companies, foreseeability is the most important protocol. The regulatory line and line required in public-private dialogue are different, and you could be subject to administrative guidance, and that comes with discretion. So it would give you more foreseeability if you say you will do anything, so just enforce the law. And that is particularly true for Act on the Protection of Specially Designated Secrets. When I was in the NPA, we were reading various laws, including road transportation law, and that is very difficult to understand, even if they are in Japanese. So it is not just about development of laws, but we, as users of the law, also need to understand what it is talking about. We need to be precise, and if we understand more, we would have more ownership in dealing with these regulations. And from the government's viewpoint, the need-to-know principle is very strong. And as mentioned in the previous session, the key to economic security is risk management. But from the government's point of view, it is often fear-based. They develop scenarios, but in the private sector, they are also budget-based. So that is why they ask for foreseeability. There are two logics that need to be combined. The private sector can also contribute to economic security, and that is also beneficial for long-term growth of companies. So they have different protocols, and I know because I was in those two positions. If we have more opportunities, I think it will be better, just like Professor Yuasa said. So maybe Mr. Ito can go into the METI for execution of the Foreign Exchange Act. I think it's going to be much better.
I completely agree. So METI is promoting public-private engagement, trying to hire or internalize more private sector personnel into the ministry. So that kind of a public-private exchange has existed from before, but they are now trying to incorporate more and more private sector personnel. And that kind of an exchange is important. However, public-private dialogue or public-private exchange, everyone is talking about this, and but it's becoming so prevalent, it's difficult to understand. Actually, within this presentation, there are three types of dialogue scheme between the private sector and the public sector, and it's all being confused and mixed up. For example, 10 technology have been designated regarding the technology transfer requiring the public-private dialogue. So that's one. But then there is also a different public-private dialogue for security clearance system. So what is the purpose? What is the dialogue? Rather than mixing everything up, I think we need to clearly categorize and define this. Thank you very much. Time is running short, so let me move on to the very last topic. The economic security risk management of companies. So companies, in order to face a economic security management, they need to conduct risk management. This is a questionnaire conducted by JETRO, and 18% have a dedicated organization, 15% have a BCP plan, and the analysis of the geopolitical risk impact is only 10% of the companies. So risk assessment and response to such risk is not that prevalent amongst Japanese companies as of yet. And one reason for that may be that there is a lot of uncertainty around economic security risk. So how you assess that and how you reflect that into action may be quite difficult to ascertain. So Ito-san, you have worked on the economic security department for a long time within your company. You were a leader of economic security within the company. So what kind of initiatives can you think about here?
Thank you. I retired in the middle of our journey, actually. But preparation or readiness for economic security risks in this material, 56% say information collection and 46.9% say review of export control. But when certain risks materialize, what could be the potential impact? Companies need to understand that quantitatively, and I think that is the most important work to do. In my familiar example, yesterday, Mr. Trump announced a new tariff policy. And if you're in a company, what could be the potential impact? What can you do to mitigate that impact? In a manufacturing company, you wouldn't have a silver bullet, but it is important to have a quantitative information. Just collecting information would be relatively easy. But when we have such information visible, that can contribute to decision-making by the senior executives. So it is not the collection of information that is important, but the important thing is to collect information that will support decision-making and to visualize risks based on those information. And another thing is TTX, tabletop exercise, is a term that we often hear these days. In one company, they planned for a TTX, and I took part. It was a well-designed scenario, and participants were close to the top management of the company. So if the top management is involved, it will be fine. But when there is a contingency, will the top management be able to have a system to quickly collect necessary information? I don't think that particular tabletop exercise was designed for that. So when something happens, and you have these conditions already given in a lot of TTX, but will the company be able to collect such information swiftly? That needs to be tested in a TTX. So visualization is very the basics of risk management. Without it, I think it will be difficult to deal with it, even if you have export control review. Thank you very much. So we've run out of time, and I would like to wrap up this discussion. Economic security. Well, this year there's going to be a preparation of revision of the Economic Security Promotion Act. There are a lot of updates. So I believe we need to continue to pay close attention. And using this kind of opportunity, I hope that we can continue discussing about many topics. Thank you very much for joining us today.